When we're in recession, we export it to the world because we're just that kind of people. That's not really a joke. Every recession we've had since 1945 has gone global. We have yet to import one. Most Americans are convinced that the United States is in decline. The funny thing is, if you go back and you look at public opinion polls going back to 1880, we've always believed that. Yet the United States is the only country in human history that has exited every decade in a stronger military and economic position than it entered it. And we've been doing that now for 14 consecutive decades. The Chinese have done that for 3. The Brits during the period of empire did it for 6. 14. We need to understand why. It's this map. At the center of the map, you'll see the interconnected waterways of the greater Mississippi. We're actually on the shore of one of the cities of that right now. And off the coast, you've got the Intracoastal Waterway. Put together, that's about 15,000 miles of interconnected waterway. Now, why is that important? 2 things. 1, moving stuff from A to B is a bit of a bitch. But moving it by water is actually pretty easy. In terms of locomotion costs, it's 1/15 the cost. Once you add in everything from the taxes that go into the infrastructure, it's about 1/50th to 1/70th the cost based on where you are. The United States has 15,000 miles in one system. The rest of the world combined has 13,000 miles. So it doesn't matter if we elect a monkey or, based on your personal preferences, another monkey, whatever. We're going to be okay because we have this as an advantage and it overlays the greatest chunk of arable land on the planet. We are always going to be capital rich as a result because it's just cheaper for us to move things from A to B. Second, we are the only country on the planet that has a spatial orientation that allows us to have a major population on both trading basins. So when the Asians are in recession, we can trade with the Europeans. When the Europeans are in recession, we can trade with the Asians. When we're in recession, we export it to the world because we're just that kind of people. That's not really a joke. Every recession we've had since 1945 has gone global. We have yet to import one. As a side effect of this, we have the world's most unified financial space because if you're on that network, it doesn't really matter if you're in Minnesota and you're borrowing from a Georgia bank. You're all literally in the same boat from the network. We identify with each other. We have the largest projection-based military in the world because we have oceans protecting us on both sides, vast open spaces to the north and the south. So when we build a military, it's not to defend a border, it's to project. We keep problems away from our shores. And as a side effect, we have the largest consumer market in the world, roughly $12 trillion right now. The rest of the global total is $13 trillion. Back in what we Americans think of as the ancient part of history, the world was imperial. The French Navy protected French trade between the French mainland and the French colonies. The British Navy did the same, and so on. It was a series of sequestered imperial economic and military systems. You didn't want to trade with your immediate neighbor, because if you did, and you went to war with them next Tuesday, that trade would disappear and your economy would immediately fall into depression. So you set up your own system and you enforced it with your own weapons. This led to, ultimately, World War II. And at the end of World War II, the Americans said, we're going to cut that shit out. And we created a fundamentally new economic structure called Bretton Woods. What it did is it said everyone can trade with everyone else. We will open our market, the largest market in history and the only really one to survive the war, and we will absorb anything you can export. We will use our Navy to guarantee freedom of the seas, to make sure that no one, pirates, Russians, Germans, Brits, French, anybody, can interfere with the trade between any 2 nations, even if we're not involved. This is the foundation of the modern world. This set up, among other things, our trade deficit. This was designed. We did this to ourselves on purpose. The one on the left, that's a supercarrier. The one on the right is a traditional jump carrier. There are about 10 jump carriers in the world. None of them are American. There are 10 supercarriers in the world. They're all American, and each one has 5 to 7 times the firepower of the little guys. If you were to sail the entire combined blue water fleet of the world against the United States, 2 of these could end it in about 6 hours. The United States has more projection tonnage than the rest of the world combined by a factor of 3. This is how we forced a new economic system on the world. We did it to fight the Cold War. We used our economy to underwrite everybody else into an alliance that we basically bribed. And it worked fantastically. You may have noticed the Cold War ended 25 years ago. We've been coasting since then, and the American commitment to the free trade order has been dropping bit by bit by bit. 2 presidents ago, the Clinton administration, NAFTA and the WTO were ratified and implemented. This president has started 0 free trade negotiations and finished 0. Whether it happens in one day of anger or a decade of neglect, we are moving away from this model. Fun thing is, we never bet our system on it in the first place. For us, it was a strategic gambit, not an economic one. As a percentage of GDP, there are only 3 countries on this planet that are less integrated to the wider world than we are: Brazil, Rwanda, and South Sudan. 14% of our GDP is from exports. 1/3 of that is oil. Guess what shale's doing to that? Of the remainder, 2/3 of our trade portfolio is in the Western Hemisphere. Half of it is just with NAFTA. The United States is an isolated economy and the biggest economy and the most secure economy. Boomers are the largest generation as a percentage of the population in American history. As such, they swarmed in hordes into the labor market when they hit age 20 to 25. They competed with each other with such anger that they drove prices down for labor across the board. That's why so many of them are 2-parent homes. Excuse me, two-income homes, because they had to be. You play that forward to where they are right now at the mature level, where they're paying in taxes en masse and they're nearing retirement, and they have the same problem. They're competing for investment opportunities. And so they're pushing money into anything that they think might eke out another % or 2 with returns. And this is where subprime comes from. This is where the developing world boom of the last 15 years comes from. It's boomer money looking to make a little bit more before they retire. Gen Y, these are people born 1980 to 1999. All right, you guys are the second largest generation as a percentage of the population in American history. You're the boomers' kids writ large. You are the best educated population that we've ever had. However, you face the same existential crisis as your parents. There's too many of you. And you're competing for jobs just like your parents did, which is driving down your earning potential, which means you still live at home. And then Gen X, people born 1966 roughly to 1980. Okay, we're the smallest generation. I'm in that group, right in the middle. We're the smallest generation ever in this country. And when we came into the workforce, there were so many boomers that we didn't hardly earn anything. We are the intern generation. Now, as the boomers retire, we're both middle and upper management from a small pool. And so what we've seen among Gen X is much higher rates of family formation in our early years because we had to get by, but much higher incomes and more stable families as we get older because the retiring boomers are leaving this huge space open for us. The downside, we've discovered, is that Gen Y will never vote for Social Security or Medicare reform. Because if they do that, their parents move in with them. So something the boomers and Gen Y agree upon is that X should pay for everything.